The first time Clara Bennett saw Dante Moretti, he was bleeding onto her hospital floor like a man too stubborn to die. Rain hammered against the glass walls of Street Aurelia Medical Center, turning the Chicago skyline into a blur of silver lights and black water. It was 2:17 inches the morning, the hour when the city felt less like a place people lived in, and more like something watching from the dark. Clara had been 12 hours into a night shift, her hair tied back, her scrub stained with antiseptic and coffee, her feet aching in the quiet way nurses learned to ignore. She was charting vitals for an elderly man recovering from surgery when the emergency bay doors exploded open. Not opened. Exploded. 4 men in black suits stormed in first, rainwater dripping from their coats, their hands hidden beneath their jackets. Behind them, 2 more men pushed a gurney so fast its wheels screamed across the polished floor. On it lay a man in a white dress shirt soaked through with blood. 3 bullet wounds. 1 near the shoulder, 1 through the side, 1 dangerously close to the heart. Every doctor in the trauma bay froze. Clara did not. "Trauma 1, she snapped. "Now." One of the armed men stepped in front of her. He was built like a wall, and had the dead-eyed stare of someone who had seen too many bodies fall. "No one touches him unless we say." Clara looked up at him, her blue gloves already snapping into place. "If you wanted him dead, you should have left him in the car." The room went silent. The man blinked, almost offended by her courage. Behind him, the bleeding man opened his eyes. Dark, almost black, cold enough to stop a weaker woman in place. But Clara was used to fear. She saw it every night in mothers waiting outside operating rooms, in teenagers holding blood-soaked towels to their stomachs, in old men pretending not to tremble. Fear did not impress her. Blood did not intimidate her. Power meant nothing when a pulse was fading beneath her hands. The man on the gurney looked at her as if he was deciding whether she was brave or foolish. Then he said, calm as winter, "Let her work." The armed man moved aside. Clara pressed both hands to the wound near his ribs. "Name?" No answer. She glanced at one of the guards. The guard swallowed. That was the first warning. Nobody wanted to say his name out loud. Clara leaned closer to the patient. "I don't care who you are. If you want to live, I need your name." His eyes held hers. "Dante." The way the room reacted told her everything. A nurse behind her dropped a tray. A resident went pale. Even Dr. Elias Vale, Street Aurelia's chief surgeon, a man famous for being calm during impossible procedures, stopped mid-step at the doorway. Dante Moretti. Clara knew the name, the way everyone in Chicago knew it. Not from police reports. Not officially. From whispers. From restaurant owners who never charged certain men. From city council members who changed their votes after quiet phone calls. From news anchors who said organized crime, without ever saying Moretti. Dante Moretti was not just a criminal. He was weather. He was gravity. He was the man beneath the city. And now he was bleeding beneath Clara's hands. "Pressure's dropping," she said. "He needs surgery." Dr. Vale finally moved forward, face composed again. "I'll take over." Clara looked at Dante's wound. Then at the slight tremor in Dr. Vale's fingers. Then at the armed men watching everyone like predators. "No," Clara said. "He goes up with me." Dr. Vale's jaw tightened. "Nurse Bennett, this is not your call." Dante's eyes shifted to her. There was something in them now. Not trust. Not warmth. Curiosity. "She stays," he said. And just like that, the most powerful surgeon in the hospital stepped aside. Clara should have been afraid. Maybe part of her was. But fear had no place in the operating room. For the next 2 hours, she moved through blood, alarms, shouted orders, and the sharp metallic rhythm of surgery. Dante never screamed. Not when they cut into him. Not when he lost consciousness. Not when they nearly lost him twice. But once, when the anesthesia was light, and Clara leaned over him to adjust the oxygen mask, his fingers closed around her wrist. Hard. Possessive. Not pleading. Commanding. She should have pulled away. Instead, she looked down at him and said, "You don't get to die on my shift." His eyes opened halfway. For 1 second, the coldness cracked. Then he whispered, "Brave girl," and fell under. By morning, Dante Moretti was alive. By morning, Clara Bennett had made the worst mistake of her quiet life. She had saved a man the city feared. And Dante Moretti had remembered her face. Clara's life had always been ordinary by design. She lived alone in a small apartment above a closed-down flower shop in Lincoln Park, where the radiator hissed at night and the neighbor's cat slept on her fire escape. She drank cheap coffee, because expensive coffee tasted like rent money. She owned 3 good dresses, all black, because black was practical. She called her younger sister every Sunday. She paid her bills late, but always paid them. She liked predictable things. Clean stitches. Steady heartbeats. Fresh sheets. The moment a fever broke. She did not like men in black SUVs, especially not when one began parking across the street from her apartment every night. The first time she noticed it, she told herself she was tired. The second time, she memorized the license plate. The third time, she walked straight across the wet pavement after a 16-hour shift, knocked on the driver's window, and waited. The window rolled down. A man with a scar through one eyebrow looked up at her. "Can I help you?" Clara asked. The man said nothing. "You've been here 3 nights. Still nothing. If this is about Mr. Moretti, tell him I don't make house calls." The man's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Go inside, Miss Bennett." The use of her name sent a cold thread down her spine. "I didn't tell you my name." "No," he said, "you didn't." Clara stepped closer. "Tell Dante Moretti if he wants to threaten me, he can do it himself." The man's expression changed then, not anger, exactly. More like alarm. "You don't summon him." "I just did." The next morning, there were 2 black SUVs. By the end of the week, there were 3. At work, people looked at her differently. Nurses lowered their voices when she entered the break room. Doctors who used to ignore her now stepped aside in hallways. Security guards nodded too respectfully. Clara hated it. She had spent years building a life where she owed nothing to anyone. Her mother had taught her that independence was not pride, it was survival. Her father had disappeared when she was 9, leaving behind unpaid debts and a suitcase of lies. Clara had learned early that powerful men often called control protection. She wanted no part of Dante Moretti's world. So when she walked into the staff parking garage after work and found him leaning against the hood of a black car, she did not stop. She walked past him. Dante Moretti looked different outside the hospital. Still pale from blood loss, yes. Still healing. But dressed in a charcoal suit beneath a black wool coat. He looked less like a patient and more like a verdict. His men stood far enough away to pretend he was alone, close enough to prove he never was. "Clara." Her name in his voice was quiet. "Tu familiar." She stopped, turned, and folded her arms. "Mr. Moretti." "Dunch." "No." A flicker crossed his face. Almost amusement. "You saved my life. I saved a patient. You knew who I was." "I knew you were bleeding." His eyes lowered briefly, tracking the exhaustion in her face. The faint bruise beneath her eye from lack of sleep. The way she kept one hand near the pepper spray clipped inside her coat pocket. "Someone followed you home last night," he said. Clara's breath caught before she could stop it. Dante noticed. Of course he noticed. "You didn't see him," he continued. "My men did. Your men shouldn't be watching me. They're keeping you alive. I didn't ask to be kept alive by criminals." The air changed. One of Dante's guards looked away. Dante did not move, did not raise his voice, did not show anger. That made him worse. "Careful," he said softly. Clara stepped closer. "No. You don't get to bleed on my table. Survive because of my hands. And then decide my life belongs to you." His eyes sharpened. "You think that's what this is? I think men like you don't know the difference between protection and possession." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Rain ticked against the concrete. A car door slammed somewhere far away. Then Dante pushed off the hood, closing the distance just enough for Clara to feel the heat of him beneath the cold air. He did not touch her, but his presence felt like a hand at her throat. "If I wanted to possess you," he said, "you would not have to wonder." Clara's pulse betrayed her. His gaze dropped to the small movement in her neck. Then he looked away first. That was the part she remembered later. Not the threat, not the arrogance. The fact that Dante Moretti, feared by judges and killers, had looked away from her as if restraint physically hurt him. "Go home, Clara," he said. "And if I don't?" His eyes returned to hers. "Then I follow you." She hated that her hands shook after he left. She hated more that she felt safer when the black SUV followed her home. 3 days later, a man grabbed Clara outside the hospital. It happened fast. She was crossing the staff lot at dawn. The sky bruised purple over Chicago. Her keys between her fingers. One moment, she was thinking about sleep. The next, a hand clamped around her arm and yanked her between 2 parked cars. She smelled cigarettes. Cologne. Wet leather. "Pretty nurse," the man whispered. "You fixed the wrong man." Clara drove her elbow into his ribs. He cursed. She twisted, but he slammed her against the side of a van hard enough to steal her breath. Then he froze. Not because of Clara, because of the gun pressed to the back of his skull. Dante's scarred driver stood behind him, expression empty. Let her go. The man released Clara instantly. Within seconds, 3 black SUVs rolled into the parking lot without headlights, surrounding them like shadows. Clara stumbled back, chest heaving. The attacker tried to speak. I was only... A car door opened. Dante stepped out. No coat this time. Just a black suit. White shirt. No tie. His left arm was still stiff from surgery. But nothing about him looked wounded now. He looked at Clara first, not at the attacker. At her. His eyes moved over her face, her throat, her arm where red fingerprints were already rising. Something dark entered the air. What did he say to you? Dante asked. Clara swallowed. Nothing. Clara. Her name was no longer quiet. It was command. She hated how close she came to answering. He said I fixed the wrong man. Dante turned toward the attacker. The man began to tremble. I didn't touch her, he lied. Clara's laugh came out sharp and broken. That's your defense? Dante did not look away from the man. Did he hurt you? Clara knew what he was asking. She also knew what would happen if she said yes. So she said, I'm fine. Dante's jaw flexed once. Then he took off his suit jacket and placed it over her shoulders. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate in the middle of all that violence, that Clara forgot to breathe. His jacket was warm, expensive, still carrying the faint scent of smoke, rain, and something darker. You're shaking, he said. I'm angry. Good. That single word did something to her. Good. As if her anger pleased him, as if fear would have disappointed him. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Not approaching. Passing. No one was coming to save her, except the man everyone else needed saving from. Dante leaned close to his driver and murmured something in Italian. The driver nodded once and dragged the attacker toward one of the SUVs. Clara grabbed Dante's wrist before thinking. His body went still. Every guard in the lot looked at her hand on him. She let go immediately. Don't kill him, she said. Dante looked at the place her fingers had touched his skin. Then at hair. He put his hands on you. I don't want blood on my conscience. It wouldn't be on yours. It would. His eyes studied her, cold and unreadable. Then he nodded once. To the police, he told his men. The attacker sagged with relief. Dante stepped closer to him and spoke softly enough that only Clara and the man could hear. If she has nightmares because of you, I'll know. The man went gray. Clara should have been horrified. Part of her was. Another part, smaller and more dangerous, felt the impossible pull of being protected so completely that the world itself seemed to step back. That terrified her more than the attacker had, because she could hate Dante's violence. But she could not pretend it did not make her feel safe. After that, Clara tried to return to normal. Normal lasted exactly 48 hours. Then a patient disappeared from Street Aurelia. Not died. Disappeared. Room 904 had been occupied by a man named Victor Hale, admitted under police watch after a car crash. Clara had seen him only once, asleep beneath monitors, his face bruised beyond recognition. Dr. Vale had been unusually protective of his chart. No nurses allowed in without permission. No students. No residents. At 3:05 a.m., his heart monitor flatlined. At 3:07, Clara ran into his room. The bed was empty. The window was open. 9 floors up. The police officer outside his door was unconscious. And on the pillow lay a black card with a silver crest Clara had never seen before. A serpent wrapped around a crown. When she picked it up, Dr. Vale appeared behind her. You shouldn't touch that. Clara turned. Where's the patient? His face was too calm. I said, put it down. Who was he? Someone you were not assigned to. The way he said it chilled her. Clara placed the card in her pocket instead. Dr. Vale noticed. His expression did not change, but his eyes did. You have a habit of involving yourself in things that don't concern you. I'm a nurse. Missing patients concern me. This hospital is not your battlefield, Clara. No, she said. But apparently it's someone's. That night, she found Dante waiting outside her apartment. Not in the car. Standing under the awning in the rain, one hand in his coat pocket, face lifted toward her window, as if he had been there a long time. Clara stopped beneath the street lamp. You can't keep doing this. Dante turned. Rain streaked through his dark hair. His eyes looked almost black under the yellow light. You have something that belongs to the Belandi family. She went cold. The what? The serpent and crown. Her fingers went instinctively to her coat pocket. Dante saw. Give it to me. No. His stare sharpened. Clara. No. She repeated. Because I found it in the room of a missing patient whose chart my chief surgeon is hiding. So either you explain what this is, or I take it to the police. The police already know less than they pretend. That's convenient. It's true. Everything is true when a man like you says it quietly enough. A shadow of something passed across his face. Pain, maybe. Hors admiration. The Belandes are a rival family, he said. Old blood. Different rules. They don't threaten, they remove. The man in room 904 was one of their cleaners. Cleaner? Assassin. The word entered the space between them like a blade. Clara's mouth went dry. Dante stepped closer. He killed my brother. For once, the coldness in his voice did not sound like control. It sounded like grief with armor over it. Clara looked up at him, rain collecting on her lashes. Your brother? Luca, 26, stupid, loyal, better than me. The last sentence was barely audible. Clara felt something inside her soften against her will. Why was the assassin in my hospital? That's what I want to know. She took out the card but did not hand it over. Dr. Vale knew. Dante's gaze lifted. There it was. The shift. The predator hearing movement in the dark. Elias Valli? You know him? Everyone knows men who pretend to be clean. Clara held the card tighter. If Vale is involved, I need proof. No, Dante said. You need distance. I'm not running because you say so. You think this is courage? I think this is my hospital, and I think you have no idea how close death is standing to you. The words should have angered her. They did, but beneath them was something else. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Dante reached toward the card, but Clara stepped back. His hand stopped in midair. He could have taken it. They both knew that. Instead, he lowered his hand slowly. Keep it then, he said. But from this moment, you do not walk anywhere alone. I don't belong to you. No, he said, voice low. That is the problem. Then he left her standing in the rain with the card in her palm and his grief lingering in the air like smoke. The forced proximity began with a lie. Clara arrived at work 2 nights later to find her ID badge disabled. Security at the front desk would not meet her eyes. Administrative review, they said. Dr. Vale appeared 5 minutes later, smiling like a man who enjoyed quiet cruelty. You've been placed on leave, Clara. For what? Unauthorized access to restricted patient records. She stared at him. Room 904. His smile did not move. You need rest. I need answers. No, he said softly. You need to remember that good nurses do not ask dangerous questions. Before she could respond, the lobby doors opened. Every conversation died. Dante Moretti entered Street Aurelia, wearing a black overcoat, and the kind of calm that made security guards forget their own authority. 2 men followed. Not rushed. Not loud. Just present. Dr. Vale's face lost color for half a second. Dante noticed. Clara noticed Dante noticing. Miss Bennett is with me, Dante said. Dr. Vale's smile tightened. This is a hospital matter. No, Dante replied. Now it's mine. Clara turned on him. Excuse me? Dante looked at her. You're not safe here. I can speak for myself. You can also walk into traps. You've proven that. Her eyes flashed. His did not. The lobby was full of people pretending not to watch. Clara stepped closer and lowered her voice. If you think you can storm into my workplace and carry me off like some kind of... You have 10 seconds, Dante said. To do what? To decide whether you walk out beside me or I make a scene. You wouldn't. He tilted his head. A challenge. A warning. A promise. Clara hated him in that moment. She hated the way people stared. Hated the way Dr. Vale smiled faintly, as if enjoying her humiliation. Hated the fact that she could feel danger closing in from directions she could not see. So she walked. Not because Dante ordered her, because staying would give Vale what he wanted. Outside, the Chicago rain had become sleet. Dante opened the rear door of the SUV himself. Clara stopped beside it. I am not your prisoner. No. Then where are you taking me? Somewhere Vale cannot reach. That sounds like a prison with better furniture. For the first time, Dante almost smiled. Almost. It has better locks. The safe house was not a house. It was a penthouse above the river. Hidden behind private elevators, mirrored glass, and armed men who looked at Dante like he was both king and executioner. The city spread below in ribbons of black water and gold lights. Rain crawled down the windows like tears. Clara stood in the living room, arms folded, refusing to be impressed by marble floors, dark wood, and priceless art. Dante handed her a phone. Use this. I have a phone. Not anymore. My phone is not yours to take. It was compromised. By who? Vale, or Belandi, or both. You say that like it's normal. In my world it is. Well, in my world, people ask before invading someone's life. His eyes moved over her face. Did you ask before saving mine? The question struck harder than she expected. That was different. Why? Because you were dying. And now you might be. Silence. The anger in her chest faltered. Dante's voice dropped. I do not enjoy being responsible for someone who refuses to understand danger. I understand danger, Clara said. I just don't confuse it with you. That stopped him. The words had slipped out before she could decide what they meant. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression closed. You should. He turned away. But Clara heard what he did not say. You should be afraid of me. And maybe she was. But fear was no longer the only thing between them. The penthouse became a battlefield of silences. Clara slept in a guest room larger than her entire apartment, with a locked balcony door and curtains thick enough to block the city. Dante did not sleep much. She would wake at odd hours and find him standing by the windows, phone to his ear, voice low, speaking in Italian to men who answered without question. Sometimes he disappeared into an office with glass walls and came out colder. Sometimes he watched security footage from Street Aurelia, rewinding the same hallway again and again. Sometimes Clara caught him looking at her like she was a problem he had not learned how to solve. On the third night, she found him in the kitchen at 2 a.m., pouring black coffee despite the stitches under his ribs. You're going to tear them, she said. He did not turn. I've had worse. Men always say that right before they faint. I don't faint. Of course not. You probably intimidate gravity. That earned her the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. Clara crossed the kitchen, took the mug from his hand, and replaced it with water. He watched her do it. Dangerously still. You give orders easily, he said. To patients who act stupidly, yes. I'm not your patient anymore. No, she said, glancing at the bandage beneath his shirt. You're just bleeding like one. For a moment, they were too close. The city glowed behind him. His hand rested on the counter beside hers, not touching. Close enough that warmth moved between them. Clara felt his gaze drop to her mouth. Then he looked away. Again, always at the edge. Always stopping himself. Why? She asked quietly. His eyes returned to hers. Why what? Why do you keep stopping? The question changed the air. Dante's face became unreadable. Because once I touch you, Clara, I will want to do it again. Her breath caught. He stepped back before she could answer. And wanting things makes men careless. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt the absence of him like a handprint. The next morning, Jealousy arrived wearing a badge. Agent Miles Harrington of the FBI came to the penthouse at noon, with a warrant he did not intend to use, and a smile Clara did not trust. He was polished, blonde, handsome in a safe way. He had the kind of face juries believed and women's mothers approved of. Clara had met him once at the hospital after a shooting victim came in under federal protection. He looked surprised to see her. Then pleased. Clara Bennett, he said. I was wondering where you disappeared. Dante stood beside the window, silent. Clara felt his attention sharpen. I didn't disappear, she said. Agent Harrington's eyes flicked to Dante. That depends on who you ask. I'm here voluntarily. Are you? Dante did not move. But every man in the room seemed to sense the temperature drop. Agent Harrington stepped closer to Clara. Your sister filed a missing person concern after you stopped answering your old phone. Guilt pierced her. My sister? She's worried. So am I. Dante spoke then. No, you're not. Harrington smiled. Excuse me? You're curious. That is different. Clara looked between them. Do you two know each other? Professionally, Harrington said. Dante's voice was calm. He has been trying to put me in prison for 6 years. And you've been avoiding justice for longer, Harrington replied. Clara stepped in before the room caught fire. Agent Harrington, if my sister called, I'll speak to her. Good. He reached into his pocket, then paused as Dante's guard shifted. Slowly, Harrington produced a phone. Use mine. Dante's gaze locked onto the phone. No. Clara turned. Dante. No. Harrington gave a soft laugh. You don't get to decide who she talks to. Dante crossed the room in 3 silent steps. He stopped close enough to Harrington that the agent's smile finally strained. You came here with a device you know can be tracked, hoping she would use it. Hoping whoever is watching would confirm she is here. Clara went cold. Harrington's eyes flickered. Tiny. But enough. Dante saw it. So did Clara. Is that true? She asked. Harrington's face softened instantly. Clara, I'm trying to help you. Dante's voice cut through the lie. By using her as bait. The words landed like a slap. Clara stepped back. Harrington looked at her then, and for the first time, the safe man mask cracked. You don't know what he is. Clara's voice shook. I know what you just tried to do. Harrington left with his warrant unused and his jaw tight. Dante watched him go. Clara stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself. My sister, she whispered. He used my sister. Dante's expression shifted. Not soft. Never soft. But something more dangerous than softness. A tension with rage beneath it. I'll have someone check on her. No threats. He looked at her. Dante. His name came out like a plea. His jaw tightened. No threats, he said. That night, Clara found a file outside her bedroom door. Inside were photos of her sister leaving work safely, entering her apartment safely, locking the door safely. Hidden surveillance. Protection. A violation. A comfort. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the photos until her eyes burned. She wanted to hate him, but the truth was becoming unbearable. Dante Moretti did not know how to care without controlling, and Clara was starting to understand the difference between a man who wanted to own her and a man terrified the world would take her from him. The hidden truth began with a child's drawing. Clara had returned to Street Aurelia under Dante's protection because she refused to let Vale erase her career. Dante hated the plan. He argued in the elevator. Quietly. Coldly. Furiously. You are walking back into a building where someone tried to remove a murderer. And if I stay hidden, Vale wins. This is not about winning. It is to me. His eyes burned. You think bravery means standing in front of the bullet? No, she said. I think bravery means not letting men like Vale decide how small my life gets. He said nothing after that. But when she stepped into the hospital lobby, Dante stepped in beside her. Every head turned. Doctors froze. Nurses stared. Patients whispered. Clara felt exposed beneath the weight of it. Dante must have sensed it, because he moved half a step closer. Not touching. Shielding. A public declaration without words. Dr. Vale met them outside the surgical wing. Miss Bennett, he said, you are still on leave. Clara smiled without warmth. Then call security. Vale's eyes moved to Dante. Security did not come. Instead, a little girl did. She appeared from the pediatric hallway in yellow socks, dragging an IV pole, her bald head wrapped in a purple scarf. Her name was Mia, 6 years old, leukemia patient, collector of stickers, queen of sass. Clara! Mia shouted. Clara's heart cracked open. She knelt instantly. Hey, troublemaker. Mia hugged her neck. Dante watched from behind her, his expression unreadable. Mia looked past Clara and up at him. Are you a bad guy? The hallway died. Clara closed her eyes. Dante crouched slowly, bringing himself to Mia's level. His suit pulled tight across his shoulders. His men looked horrified. Yes, he said. Mia considered this. Are you bad to Clara? No. Then you can stay. Clara looked at him. Something almost human moved across Dante's face before he buried it. Mia tugged a folded paper from her hospital gown pocket. I made you this before you left. Clara opened it. A drawing. Saint Aurelia. A nurse with yellow hair. A man in black standing beside her. And behind them, a shadow with a serpent crown. Clara's blood turned cold. Mia, she whispered. Where did you see this? The girl pointed toward the restricted elevator. The nice doctor had that picture on his phone. Which doctor? Mia looked around, suddenly afraid. Dante's voice became very gentle. Too gentle. Little one. Mia pointed. Dr. Vale. The next moments happened fast. Dante moved toward Vale. Vale stepped back. A fire alarm screamed. Not a drill. A real alarm. Then the lights cut out. Emergency red washed over the hospital. Somewhere below them, gunfire cracked. Dante seized Clara's wrist and pulled her behind him as chaos erupted. Doctors ran. Patients screamed. Security radios exploded with overlapping panic. Code Black, a voice announced over the speakers. Hospital lockdown initiated. All exits sealed. Clara's stomach dropped. Dante looked at her. For the first time since she had known him, she saw fear enter his eyes. Not for the bullets. For her. Stay behind me, he said. They ran through red-lit corridors as armed men flooded the hospital from service entrances. Dante moved like violence given shape, calm in the middle of terror, one hand around Clara's wrist, the other holding a gun she had not seen him draw. At the pediatric wing, Clara stopped. Mia. Dante turned. Clara. I'm not leaving her. His face hardened. There are shooters in the building. She's 6. That was all she said. Dante stared at her for one brutal second, then cursed under his breath. This way. They found Mia hiding under a bed with 2 other children and a nurse crying silently beside them. Dante lifted one child into his arms with the awkward care of a man who had never held anything fragile and did not trust himself not to break it. Clara grabbed Mia. The hallway exploded before they reached the stairwell. Glass shattered. A bullet tore through the wall. Dante shoved Clara behind a medication cart, covering her body with his. She felt the impact of him, the heat, the strength, the violence in his breathing. His face was inches from hers. For one impossible moment, the world narrowed to his eyes. You keep choosing everyone else, he said, voice rough. Clara, shaking, whispered, That's my job. No, he said, that is who you are. Then he stood and returned fire. Clara did not watch the men fall. She watched Dante and understood, with a terror deeper than bullets, that the most dangerous man in Chicago had just become dangerous for her. Not around her. For her. Clara vanished at 4:38 a.m. Dante would remember the exact minute for the rest of his life. They had reached the East Surgical Corridor, moving patients toward the old service tunnels beneath Street Aurelia. Dante's men were securing exits. Police were blocked outside by the lockdown system. The hospital had become a maze of red lights, sealed doors, smoke, and screams. Then Mia's IV line snagged on a door handle. Clara stopped to free it. Dante turned for 1 second to cover the stairwell. 1 second. When he looked back, Clara was gone. Not shot. Not fallen. Gone. Mia stood alone in the hallway, sobbing, clutching Clara's broken ID badge. Dante stopped breathing. The sound around him faded. Gunfire became distant. Alarms became silence. The world became one fact. Clara was gone. His men had seen him angry before. They had seen him execute traitors, break alliances, burn warehouses, and sit calmly through assassination attempts. They had never seen this. Dante took the broken badge from Mia's hand. His fingers closed around it so tightly the plastic cracked. Find her, he said. No one moved. Maybe because his voice was too quiet. Maybe because they understood that something in him had shifted beyond reason. Dante turned slowly. Find her now. Chicago felt it before dawn. Every Moretti-owned truck blocked intersections around the hospital. Every underground club closed its doors. Every police scanner flooded with false reports. Every corrupt politician received one phone call and stopped asking questions. Black SUVs poured through rainy streets like a funeral procession for a woman not yet dead. Inside Street Aurelia, Dante stood in the security room beneath flickering lights, watching footage frame by frame. Clara freeing the IV line. A nurse stepping behind her. A hand over her mouth. A restricted elevator opening. Gone. Dante stared at the screen. Again. His lieutenant, Marco, replayed it. Again. 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 On the 7th replay, Dante saw it. A ring on the fake nurse's hand. Bellandi crest. Serpent and crown. Marco swallowed. Dante. Where's Vale? Missing. Dante closed his eyes. Just once. When he opened them, there was nothing left in his face but war. Shut down the city. Marco went still. All of it? All of it. By sunrise, Chicago began to break. The bridges lifted, and stayed lifted. Moretti men blocked underground parking garages, private airports, freight yards, and marina exits. Every Bellandi contact in the city vanished into interrogation rooms without windows. Dante walked through them one by one, shirt still stained with blood that was not all his. Men lit. Men begel. Men promised. Dante listened calmly. But calm had become the most terrifying thing about him. At 9:12 a.m., a Bellandi courier finally spoke. Vale has her. Dante's hand paused on the table. Where? The courier wept before answering. Under the hospital. Clara woke beneath the city. The air smelled of bleach, rust, and old water. Her wrists were zip-tied to the arms of a surgical chair. Her head throbbed. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead. For a moment, she thought she was alone. Then Dr. Vale stepped from the shadows wearing a surgical mask pulled beneath his chin. "Good," he said. "You're awake." Clara forced herself not to panic. Panic wasted oxygen. "You attacked your own hospital." Vale smiled faintly. Street Aurelia has never been just a hospital. Behind him, Clara saw stainless steel tables, old medical files, locked cabinets, a tunnel door marked with faded letters. Morgue access. Her stomach turned. What is this place? A necessary room. For what? For people who need to disappear. The truth settled over her slowly. The missing patient, the restricted charts, the sealed elevators, the powerful men treated off record. Street Aurelia was not just healing the city's elite. It was hiding their crimes. Vale moved closer. Dante Moretti has been searching for his brother's killer for 2 years. He thought the Bellandis did it alone. He was wrong. Clara's throat tightened. "You helped them." "I helped everyone," Vale said. "That is the secret to survival in Chicago." "Why take me?" His eyes gleamed. Because Dante Moretti made the first careless decision of his adult life. Clara understood. Here. She was the careless decision. Vale placed a tablet in front of her. On the screen was a video feed. Dante, standing in some underground room, face carved from stone, blood on his collar, men behind him waiting for orders. Clara's heart twisted painfully. Vale watched her reaction with satisfaction. "He looks almost human when it concerns you." Clara said nothing. Vale leaned closer. "Do you know why that is dangerous? Because men like you hate anything they can't use." His smile faded. There she was, still standing up, still herself, even tied to a chair beneath the city. Vale slapped her. Pain burst across her cheek, sharp and humiliating. Clara tasted blood, but she looked back at him. "Was that supposed to make you feel powerful?" Vale's eyes darkened. Before he could respond, a phone rang. He answered, listened, then smiled. "He's coming." Clara's blood ran cold. Vale held the phone out. "Say something to him." "No." He gripped her jaw hard enough to bruise. "Say something, or I send him one of your fingers." The phone clicked onto speaker. For 1 second, there was only static. Then Dante's voice. "Clara." She closed her eyes. The sound of him almost broke her. Not because it was soft. Because it was controlled so tightly she could hear the violence underneath. "I'm here," she said. Silence. Then lower. "Are you hurt?" Clara looked at Vale. At the camera. At the blood on her lip. "I'm okay." Dante heard the lie. Of course he did. Vale smiled into the phone. "She's brave. I see why you like her." Dante said nothing. Vale continued. "Come alone. Old morgue tunnels. No men, no police, no tricks." Dante's voice was quiet. "If she has one more bruise when I find her, I will bury you in the foundation of this hospital." Vale's smile twitched. "There he is," he whispered. "The monster." Clara leaned toward the phone before Vale could pull it away. "Dante, don't come alone." For the first time, his voice changed. "Clara, don't. I am already there." The line went dead. Vale's smile vanished. A sound echoed beyond the tunnel door. Not loud, not chaotic. A single metallic knock. Then another. Then silence. Vale turned toward the door. Clara heard the men outside raise their weapons. The door blew inward. Darkness, smoke, gunfire. Then Dante Moretti stepped through hell. He came for her covered in blood. That was the image Clara would never forget. Dante emerging through smoke beneath the hospital. White shirt torn open at the collar, gun in one hand. Eyes locked on her like the rest of the world no longer existed. Men shouted. Bullets struck steel. Glass shattered. But Dante moved through it all with terrifying calm. Not reckless. Not wild. Precise. Every step a decision. Every shot an ending. Vale grabbed Clara from behind and pressed a scalpel to her throat. "Stop." Dante stopped instantly. The room froze. His eyes dropped to the blade against Clara's skin. Something in his face broke so quietly only she saw it. Fear. Rough. Unarmored. Not of death. Of arriving too late. "Let her go," Dante said. Vale laughed. "You really did lose your mind over a nurse." Dante did not look at him. Only at Clara. "Are you with me?" he asked. The question made no sense. And yet she understood. "Do you trust me?" Her throat moved against the blade. "Yes." Dante's eyes shifted. Tiny. To the left. Clara acted before she could be afraid. She drove her heel down on Vale's foot, twisted sideways, and let herself fall. The scalpel sliced her collarbone instead of her throat. Dante fired. Vale screamed. The blade clattered to the floor. Dante crossed the room and caught Clara before she hit the ground. His arms closed around her so tightly she could barely breathe. For 1 second, the Mafia Boss forgot the room. Forgot the war. Forgot his men. He pressed his forehead to her hair and exhaled like a man pulled back from the edge of madness. "You were gone," he said. The words were almost soundless. Clara's hands shook against his chest. "I'm here." His grip tightened. "You were gone." Now she understood. This was not anger. This was the emotional breakdown of a man who had trained himself not to feel anything because feeling meant weakness, and weakness got people killed. But she had become the weakness, and he no longer cared who saw it. Behind them, Vale groaned on the floor, bleeding but alive. Dante slowly lifted his head. The cold returned. Not for Clara. Never for Clara. For him. Vale tried to crawl away. Dante stood, keeping Clara behind him. "You used my hospital," Dante said. Vale laughed weakly. "Your hospital? You don't own healing, Moretti." "No," Dante said, "but I own consequence." Clara grabbed his arm. "Don't you?" He stopped. She could feel the violence in him like a storm pressing against glass. "Don't," she whispered. Vale looked relieved. Dante looked at Clara. For a terrible second, she thought he would choose vengeance anyway. Then he lowered the gun. "Call the FBI," he told Marco. Vale's relief deepened. Dante leaned down beside him. "But not Harrington." Vale's face changed. Dante smiled then. "Not kindly. I found out who paid him." Clara's stomach turned. The betrayal was not over. Agent Harrington arrived at Street Aurelia, expecting to arrest Dante Moretti. Instead, he walked into a trap. By then, the hospital lockdown had lifted. But the city had not. News helicopters circled above. Police filled the streets. Reporters shouted behind barricades. Patients were being moved. Nurses cried in each other's arms. The luxury hospital that had always looked untouchable now stood exposed beneath gray morning light. Clara sat on the edge of an ambulance with a blanket around her shoulders while a paramedic cleaned the cut near her collarbone. Dante stood 10 feet away, refusing treatment. His eyes returned to her every few seconds, as if she might disappear again if he blinked too long. Harrington crossed the ambulance bay, with federal agents behind him. "Dante Moretti," he called. "You're under arrest." Dante turned slowly. Clara stood before she meant to. Dante noticed, and something like warmth moved through his eyes. Harrington's gaze flicked to her wound. "Clara, step away from him." "No." The word surprised even her. Harrington's expression hardened. "You've been manipulated." "By you?" The agents behind him shifted. Clara stepped off the ambulance, blanket sliding from one shoulder. "You tried to use me as bait. You knew Vale was dirty. You knew the Bellandis had people inside the hospital. And you still sent me back into danger. Because you wanted Dante exposed." Harrington's face tightened. Dante said nothing. For once, he let her stand in front. Clara's voice shook, but it did not break. "You don't get to call that justice." Harrington took one step closer. Dante moved. Not in front of Clara. Beside her. A choice. Not possession. Partnership. Harrington smiled coldly. "Careful, Miss Bennett. Standing next to him changes how this looks." Clara made his eyes. "Good." That single word cracked the morning open. Reporters caught it. Cameras turned. Chicago watched a nurse stand beside the man they had been taught to fear. Then Marco handed an evidence drive to one of the federal agents behind Harrington. Not Harrington. Another agent. A woman with sharp eyes and no patience for theater. "Agent Cole," Marco said. "Everything you need." Harrington's face went pale. Agent Cole inserted an earpiece, listened, then looked at Harrington. "Miles Harrington, you're being detained pending internal investigation." For the first time all morning, Harrington lost control. "This is insane. You're taking evidence from the Mafia?" Clara looked at him. "No," she said. "From the hospital you let become a graveyard." As agents moved toward Harrington, he lunged. Not at Dante. At Clara. Maybe he thought Dante would not fire in front of cameras. Maybe he forgot that Dante Moretti had already lost her once. Dante moved faster than thought. He caught Harrington by the throat and slammed him against the ambulance hard enough to dent metal. Guns rose everywhere. Cameras flashed. Clara gasped. Dante leaned close to Harrington's ear. His voice was calm enough to terrify God. "You do not get to reach for her." Clara placed a hand on Dante's arm. not to stop him out of fear, to bring him back. Dante. His grip remained for one breath. Tfo. Then he released Harrington and stepped back. The cameras captured that too. Not just the violence, the restraint, the way the most feared man in Chicago stopped because one nurse said his name. By sunset, the story had gone national. A hospital corruption scandal. A mafia war hidden beneath luxury medicine. A federal agent under investigation. A nurse who survived. And Dante Moretti, caught on every screen in America, standing between Clara Bennett and the world. For 3 weeks, Clara did not see him. That was his decision, not hers. After the hospital scandal broke, Street Aurelia closed its private surgical wing. Vale survived and began talking in federal custody. Harrington's career collapsed under evidence of bribery, obstruction, and collaboration with the Bellandis. The city pretended to be shocked, the way cities always did when their secrets became headlines. Clara healed, physically at least. Her collarbone became a thin red line. Her cheek faded from purple to yellow to nothing. She returned to her apartment above the closed flower shop and found the black SUVs gone. For the first time in weeks, no one watched her door. No one followed her home. No one sent proof that her sister was safe. No one invaded her life in the name of protection. She should have felt free. Instead, every silence felt abandoned. Clara hated that. She hated standing at her window at midnight, looking down at an empty street, missing the car she once resented. She hated hearing thunder and remembering Dante standing outside in the rain. She hated touching the scar near her collarbone and remembering his forehead pressed to her hair, the broken way he had said, "You were gone." On the 22nd night, she found a box outside her door. No note. Inside was her old ID badge from Street Aurelia, repaired with a thin line of gold through the crack. Kintsugi. Broken, but honored. Clara sat on the floor holding it, tears burning her eyes. Underneath the badge was a key and an address. The address led to an abandoned church on the south side. Clara should not have gone. Of course she went. The church stood beneath a violet sky, its windows boarded, its stone dark with rain. Inside, hundreds of candles burned along the aisle, turning the ruined sanctuary gold. At the altar stood Dante Moretti in a black suit, his hands folded in front of him, his face unreadable. No guards. No guns visible. Just him. Clara stopped halfway down the aisle. "This is dramatic," she said. His mouth almost moved. "I don't know how to apologize in small rooms." The honesty disarmed her. She stepped closer. "You disappeared." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted to keep you." Her breath caught. Dante looked at her then, and there was no mask strong enough to hide what lived in his eyes. "And I knew that if I stayed, I would convince myself protection was a reason to take more than you offered." Clara's throat tightened. "So you left." "I tried." "Tried?" His gaze dropped. "I was outside your street every night." Her heart twisted. "I didn't see you." "I know." That hurt more. Somehow. Because he had been there, but had chosen not to make her feel watched. Chosen restraint over obsession, even when obsession was easier. Clara walked closer until only a few feet separated them. "You scared me," she said. "I know. You controlled things you had no right to control. I know. You made decisions for me." His jaw tightened. "I know. And when I vanished, you burned the city down." He looked at her. "I would do worse." There it was. The darkness. Not gone. Never gone. Dante Moretti would never become a gentleman. But maybe he could become an honest one. Clara took another step. "I don't want a cage, Dante. I know. I don't want men outside my apartment unless I ask. I know. I don't want to be owned." His eyes burned. "You are not something that can be owned." Silence filled the church. Rain whispered through broken stone. Clara looked at the candles, the ruined altar, the man standing in front of her like a sinner who had never asked heaven for anything before. "What do you want?" she asked. Dante's answer came without hesitation. "You alive." "That's not enough." His face shifted. Pain. Fear. Devotion forced into words for the first time. "You free," he said. "Even if it means away from me." Clara closed her eyes. That was the line. That was the transformation. Not softness. Not redemption wrapped in pretty lies. A man like Dante did not become safe. He became aware of the damage his love could do, and chose, with effort, not to make his fear her prison. When Clara opened her eyes, he was still watching her. Waiting. Not taking. For once, letting her decide. She crossed the final distance between them. Dante went completely still as she reached up and touched his face. His breath changed. A dangerous man undone by a gentle hand. You don't get to vanish either, she whispered. His eyes closed briefly. No. And you don't get to decide what I can survive. No. And if I stay, his eyes opened. The candles flickered between them. If you stay, he said, voice rough, I spend the rest of my life proving I know the difference between protecting you and possessing you. Clara's thumb brushed his cheek. And if you forget? His chaza held hers. Then you remind me. How? Say my name. Her heart broke open then. Not because it was perfect. Because it was not. Because love in their world would never be soft morning light and simple promises. It would be rain on black windows, blood on white shirts, silence heavy with things unsaid. It would be two damaged people standing in the ruins of what nearly destroyed them, choosing something dangerous with their eyes open. Dante lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to move away. She did not. His fingers touched her wrist first. Careful, reverent. Nothing like the night he had grabbed her in the hospital. Then he drew her hand from his face and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. Not ownership, a vow. Clara stepped into him. He froze for one last second, as if the force of wanting her still frightened him. Then his arms came around her. Outside, thunder rolled over Chicago. Inside the abandoned church, the Mafia Boss held the nurse who had saved his life, lost her, found her, and finally learned that devotion without freedom was only another kind of violence. Months later, people would still talk about the night Dante Moretti shut down Chicago. They would talk about the bridges, the black SUVs, the hospital lockdown, the federal arrests, the secret morgue tunnels beneath Street Aurelia. They would talk about power, fear, corruption, blood, but they would never know the real story. They would never know that it began with a nurse who refused to let a dangerous man die. They would never know that the most feared mafia boss in Chicago learned fear for the first time when she vanished. And they would never know what happened after the city moved on. How Dante bought the closed flower shop beneath Clara's apartment and turned it into a free clinic for women who could not afford care. How Clara refused to let him name it after her. How he did anyway, but only on the paperwork, where no one could see. How she returned to nursing, not at Street Aurelia, but in a small emergency clinic with bulletproof glass Dante pretended was standard renovation. How every Thursday night, a black car waited 1 block away instead of outside her door, because boundaries mattered. How sometimes, after impossible shifts, Clara would find Dante sitting in the back pew of the abandoned church, still in his suit, surrounded by candlelight, as if that ruined place was the only room in Chicago where he knew how to be honest. And how one winter night, when snow covered the city and the clinic lights glowed warm against the dark, Clara stepped outside to find him waiting beneath a street lamp. No guards visible, no commands, no storm in his face. Just Dante. He held out his hand. Walk with me? Clara looked at the hand that had once held guns, signed death warrants, moved cities, destroyed enemies, and trembled only once when it thought it had lost her. Then she placed her hand in his. Only if I choose the direction. Dante's mouth curved, barely. Always. They walked through the snow side by side, past the clinic windows, past the quiet street, past the black car waiting at a respectful distance. Chicago glittered around them, dangerous and beautiful. Clara leaned into his warmth, and Dante, who had once believed love was a weakness men like him could not survive, held her hand like it was the one thing in the world he would never command. Behind them, the clinic sign glowed softly through the falling snow. Bennett Care. A place for the wounded. A place for second chances. A place built by a monster who had learned that saving a woman did not mean owning her, and by a nurse who had learned that even the darkest men could kneel in the ruins and choose not to become what the world expected. At the corner, Clara stopped. Dante looked down at her. What is it? She studied him for a long moment, snow catching in his dark hair, city lights reflected in his eyes. Then she said, You're still terrifying. His expression did not change, but his thumb brushed once over her hand. Good. Clara laughed softly, the sound disappearing into the snow. Dante watched her like that laugh was worth more than every empire beneath Chicago. Then his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. His face cooled as he read the message. Clara felt it immediately. The old world calling. Blood. Debt. Danger. Dante slipped the phone into his coat without answering. What was that? She asked. A problem. Your problem? His eyes met hers. Our cities. Clara should have been afraid. Maybe she was. But fear was no longer the whole story. She tightened her hand around his. Then we handle it tomorrow. Dante looked at her as if no one had ever included themselves in his darkness and stayed. Then he nodded. Tomorrow. They kept walking. Snow fell harder. Somewhere far away, sirens rose and faded into the night. And beneath the glittering violence of Chicago, the Mafia Boss and the nurse disappeared into the storm. Not as captor and captive, not as savior and victim, but as two dangerous hearts bound by blood, restraint, and a love that had survived the moment the whole city went dark.